He said that's incredible. Did you hear that, Kevin?
I heard it. It's on the record.
Thank you. Gary Kaul, principal at Clarkston High School. When I grew up in a family of educators. My dad was a teacher in Clarkston, so was my uncle. They both coached multiple sports for years and years and years, and I think that probably had an influence on me. When I went to college, that wasn't my first choice. I was going to be an attorney or work in politics. And then I had an opportunity to experience a little bit through internships, both of those worlds, and they weren't very interesting as I thought they would be, and I kind of gravitated toward education, which using hindsight I probably would have anyway, but it kind of sped up my decision with what I wanted to do when I was at Michigan State. Well, both with, I did an internship with a branch of the state government, and then I did some observations of attorneys in the Lansing area, and I did take away a sense that, like, working with people, developing relationships, and kind of started to think how important that was in any job you're going to go into. And of course, with my father working in education and my uncle, and particularly with the coaching and extracurricular things they did, the relationships that they had developed with their colleagues and kids, during their time throughout their careers, it kind of started to come to light, how important that was and how meaningful it was for both of them, and how meaningful it's been to me since I've been in education for 25 plus years. Every once in a while you'll hear a story about, or read an article, who's had a big effect in your life, and it's like 85% of people say a teacher or a coach or somebody that they had in school, their band director. And it was the same with me. I had several mentors who were teachers and coaches along the way that influenced me. Some of them influenced me to kind of go into law or go into politics, and also to go into teaching as well. I don't know that anything surprises me. Maybe anybody going into any kind of career doesn't really realize how hard you have to work at something, and how dedicated and focused you have to be if you really want to be good at it. I know when we came in here, you guys were talking about something that you're passionate about. I struggle with that concept sometimes. Like, I see students who are in high school and they're very passionate about something, and you try to translate that to something you can do for your entire career. Maybe you had a passion in media and television and movies and video, but until you start doing it, you don't really realize the actual work that it takes to go into that if you want to keep your passion alive, or if you want to be successful in your chosen career field. So I guess that was pretty surprising, but again, I don't really get too surprised about anything. But as a 24-year-old going into the world of work for the first time, it is kind of eye-opening when you see what goes into everything, particularly in education, because you wear so many hats and there's so many roles and you're doing so many different things throughout a day. My favorite hat is when I get to walk around the halls and joke around with people and interact with students and teachers. That's my favorite hat to wear. Is that a comedian hat? They don't wear hats typically. Maybe some of them do. But no, it's been kind of fascinating the skills you develop, right? Because I was a teacher for 7 years, and then I entered into administration. When I taught, I was a coach. I sponsored clubs. I was pretty active. I think that's how somebody kind of gets into administration. Older administrators ask you to do something and you never say no, and eventually you wind up sitting in one of these chairs. But you're a psychologist, you're a social worker, you're a police officer, you're a disciplinarian, you're a curriculum specialist, you're a moderator. There's any one day, I've probably just in today done about 17 different things that could be aspects of other jobs that people have, outside of a school. When I started teaching, I thought I would coach sports, be a teacher, and sponsor clubs with things I was really into at the time, forever. And then, kind of like a river with twists and turns, so does your career. And I matriculated toward administration and as an assistant principal, and then one thing just kind of came after another. But I've been doing this for, I think this is my 10th or 11th year, and I'd like to work another 12 years, and I don't see myself going anywhere. I like what I'm doing here now. Maybe the neatest things I've encountered over my career is to see success stories of from students who come in and they might have a lot of struggles, right? Some kids struggle academically, some socially, some emotionally, and then you have some students that struggle in every area, right? That you can have an effect on them in school. And then to see where they end up when they get out and how they've matured and how they carry themselves differently and how they're serious about, as serious as a 18-year-old can be, about what they want to do in the future and where they want to go, and they have a vision now, and how they're just totally, completely different people than when they walked in. And you know that is because of other outside factors, right? Parents, mentors in the community, their friends, peer group they hang around with, but also the experiences they've had in here. And you can directly see, I remember when you came in and you were this kid, and because of these things happening around here, and again, other experiences, you are now this person. And, I have no doubt that when you walk out of these doors, things are gonna go all right for you. So, yeah. The change that happens is what schools are legislated or expected to do. I've seen that change over time. So for instance, social services, it's more difficult for families and students to get outside social services help. So medical help, we now within the school district have a partnership with a couple of local medical facilities that we work very closely with to try to provide assistance to our students. Mental health services. I have seen that change, and I don't know if it's chicken or an egg thing, right? There's a need for that, so did it change because of that, or have the services kind of gone away a little bit, and then somebody's got to pick up where there's a void. And schools do that, and I think they do a pretty good job of it. And we're not really, set up to do a lot of those things. We're kind of, building a plane as it's flying. But that's a change I've seen. I think I always had this vision that a high school principal, probably when I was very, very young, was somebody who just kind of walked around and punched people in the arms and said "attaboy" and kiss babies and shook hands with people. Now, obviously, it's a very naive, perspective of it. But the job is so all-encompassing for a high school administrator these days, and there's a lot of things. We joke, if we're talking about bringing in medical services to the high school, we'll say, well, I never had that class in grad school, because there's many things that as the career is evolving that you don't have any training for. You're kind of learning as you go, and we work with people in the community, and all of our administration does a good job of working together on these things. But there's something new comes every year. And I guess if I reflect on it, I'd think, I never saw that coming. I didn't know we'd be responsible for that. You're afforded the opportunity to do a lot of different things in the community. We're pretty tied into a lot of civic organizations, religious organizations. I can't speak for all the surrounding areas, but I think it's pretty much the same. I know in Clarkston we've got great relationships with our local religious organizations, civic organizations, local government, and it's nothing like being a superintendent, right, where you're really tied into those entities. But on a smaller level, it is. We have people coming in and out of school, helping provide services for our students. We were just at a meeting this morning about advanced placement and international baccalaureate testing at the end of the year. And there's a church in our area that allows us to use their facilities because we can't house them. So it's a lot of little things like that. But also as a principal, you're kind of the face of the school, right? Something goes good, they might march out there to be seen. Something goes bad, you're the one that people will talk to and call, and you're the one that's putting out the messaging for it. So there are a lot of local ties to the community and opportunities to get involved in community activities and events. Well, practically speaking, we have so much professional development we have to do a year to keep our certifications, whether you're a teacher or an administrator. And so you do that every year. And one of the nice things about being an administrator, I get some of those hours through the work that we do in Clarkston. And it's not much different than teachers do. Work on curriculum, social, emotional things, the practices that we're bringing in the school. I'm a member of a couple professional organizations, and so you're constantly doing things. I'll usually do nowadays virtual, a couple of educational pieces a year, online, usually through those professional organizations. One thing that's been very good for me, I'm on the executive board of our Oakland County, it's called the OAA, Oakland Activities Association, with our 27 member schools in the county, and I've done that for years and years and years. And some of it's formalized professional development that we help organize through Oakland schools. But as being on the executive board, I'm tied in with 6 or 7 other high school principals, and that gives us an opportunity to really look at what we need individually in our schools, but what schools in the area need, and bring in speakers and bring in and get the principals together and assistant principals. That's probably been the most beneficial, the relationships that I've been able to make with our principals in the area. It was beneficial in a lot of ways. I was a union representative when I was a teacher as part of the Clarkston Education Association and MEA. So I got to learn about, the importance of the union and what it does for employees. You go into a management position and sometimes you're negotiating with members of the union. So it gave me a good understanding and background to be able to do some of that negotiating, which I've done for years around here with our bargaining teams. I don't think somebody can be a successful administrator if they don't have practical teaching experience. And, like I said, I've been doing this for 25 years now. I only taught for 7 years. And sometimes when I'm talking to a teacher and I'm telling them what I think they should be doing, I almost remember, I'm embarrassed because I think, you've been doing this for 30 years and I did it for 7, right? But it does give you that practical experience to know what goes on day to day in the classroom and the trials and tribulations and successes that teachers have, and helps you support them. But yeah, I don't think you could be a successful administrator without really having an understanding of what goes on in the classroom. I guess the word that comes to mind when you ask that question is impartiality. You can't go into any issue or situation or circumstance in a school and have any preconceived notions about anything, whether it's working with teachers or any staff member, particularly working with students. And I'm almost middle of the road, maybe to a fault. As you guys know, we've gone through some very trying political, economic, health-related times, and there are a lot of opinions on either side of the spectrum, very strong opinions. And one thing that I have done, I try to understand both sides of what's going on any issue, and I think working in a school has really helped me do that. Everybody has a second story. I think of discipline in a high school setting. A kid turns around and throws a rock and breaks a window, and your first, inclination is to sit them down, yell at them, and then, spend them for a day and be done with it. But you learn very quickly that you can't do that. There's always a reason, a cause and effect of why a person engaged in this type of behavior or why they're not successful in the classroom. And you've really got to dig down and use an impartial lens when you're looking at a situation and educate yourself on it and try to make an informed decision. What's interesting you ask me that, because you are always a principal. So I grew up in Clarkston. I went to Clarkston. I I came back and taught in Clarkston, and we currently live in Clarkston. I've got kids that went through Clarkston schools. I can't get away from it. So if I call them Kroger conversations, I can't go to Kroger without somebody not approaching me and asking me about something that's going on with school. I really like that. Sometimes it gets really old, but I really like that. When I'm not doing principal-y stuff, I like to do the same things everybody else does, you know? Chase my kids around, read, exercise. I wish I had something more exciting to tell you. Parasailing. I'm building a sailboat currently. No, I'm not doing any of those things. I'm just being a principal. For me, I don't know how I could be as effective. Some people might argue what effective means for me. Over my time doing this job, if I hadn't lived here. You know, I really think you have to know the community and understand the community. Loyalty is very important. Relationships are very important. You know, I'm almost to the point where I'm starting to have grandkids of kids that I went to school with, right? And in some ways it makes your job a lot easier because there's a level of trust. You know, several times a week I'll have to speak to somebody in the community, a parent, about an issue, and typically they know me, right? Or my parents knew their parents, or we grew up together, or we have some type of connection. And I think that puts people at ease. I think it's critically important. Is there sometimes I wish I could go to a restaurant and not have somebody come over in the middle of my dinner and ask me about school? Yeah. But I don't think I'd trade that. Plus, I love driving 4 minutes to work. I love it. Maybe flexibility. You know, as we discussed, there's so many different things you do during a day. And one of the assistant principals came in earlier and asked, "What are you working on?" And literally at that time, I had 12 different things half done. I could point to them on the desk and little notes all over the place and on the computer. And they were varied in different types of things that I'm trying to get through. And to be able to pick something up, put it down, change gears, and maintain focus on what's important with those things, I think that's probably at least right now coming to mind, one of the most important qualities to have.